psychology major. I'm so excited right now for this to be our first event. We will be having these monthly where we'll have like new research, new month. We're so excited that everybody has came today, and we're so excited that Dr. Flynn is also here with Dr. Barnes. We really appreciate it. We're very thankful. And I just want this to be a great discussion, great night. After they're done presenting their research, make sure if you have any questions, write them down, ask them, and please, please be engaged. Thank you so much.
So I was gonna say Psych Club, just to give like I guess a really brief like explanation. We're just we're just gonna try to find I guess like fun and engaging ways to have well-rounded and productive conversations surrounding this field or the discipline of psychology. And really, again, like I said it earlier, but I don't know if everyone was present. It's really important to make the distinction between mental well-being and psychology as a discipline, as a study, and especially that research aspect. Um, so we'll be having more events that kind of blend that and maybe a way of like making friends and things like that. And I'm gonna hand it off to Dr. Flynn, who is our speaker tonight. Yeah.
Well, good evening. It is an honor to join you all. And I thank Dr. Barnes for inviting me to do so. I'm interested in learning who you are, but there's so many people on. I don't know how to go about doing that. What do you suggest?
I would say with such a large number of students, I think it'd be nice if they could chat, put something in the chat
Okay,
about who they are.
that would just be fine with me. Um, so the topic tonight is intergenerational trauma. Are there one or two people who want to venture a definition? Who would like to take a chance at defining that? And I can't see all hands and things like that, so I'll lean on Olivia to let me know if there are people who want to take a chance on defining.
All right, Maria, looks like it. She'd like to speak. Go ahead, Maria.
You asked for the definition of generational trauma.
Maria, I don't hear you too well. Come at it again.
You're asking for the definition of generational trauma.
Yes, what's your view on that?
Basically, like it's trauma that's passed down from like parents, like grandparents to parents, and parents to children, and it's a cycle that continues without change.
Thank you. Anyone else want to come at it? We'll take maybe one or two more. If there are one or two more brave souls.
Stephanie, excellent, excellent.
Or the way my mother would put it is broken cycles or unbroken cycles that are passed down from caregiver to child.
Okay.
And I love that you started off by saying the way my mother would put it.
I thought that was
Yeah,
interesting too.
the resolution to these issues is really for families to talk.
Yeah. Yeah. Has your mother addressed this with you, Stephanie?
All the time, actually. My mom has always been open about making progress within yourself to be a better parent to me. Also a really big reason why I wanted to get into psychology in the first place.
Thank you. Is there one more person? And Stephanie, what you said is very much like what we heard with the first response, right? Yeah. So you guys are sort of on this. Is there anyone else that wants to? Okay. So you pretty much have it. It's the psychological impact of trauma, and it is passed down through the generations, through parenting styles or family dynamics, or even genetic changes. Have any of you heard about the business of the genetics of this? Have you heard about a book called Weathering? Okay, I got to turn off this announcement. This book called Weathering, if you're interested in intergenerational trauma, you'll find this book by Dr. Arlene Geronimus fascinating because she looks at the intersection of social injustice and systemic injustice and science. And she maintains that our organs get worn down by being assaulted by long-term exposure to continuous stress. Has anyone heard of her or her theory there? Well, then you might want to look into that since you guys are obviously serious in your major.
We do have a
So
race
Maria
team.
has heard of that theory a lot. Maria, do you want to share anything that you've heard?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard people say it, but I saw the actual manifestation of it. Because my father, who's always stressed out, actually developed an autoimmune disorder, and even his doctors were talking about that.
So that is really good input, Maria. It helps us all. So as I couldn't hear you very well, but what I think is that you said your father developed an autoimmune disorder because of continuous stress. Did I hear you correctly?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And that is a contemporary view on a lot that comes through racial trauma. Dr. Barnes does a wonderful presentation on racial trauma. Has anyone heard of attachment disorder? You can put it,
No,
no?
I have not.
Okay, but some people have. So Karen, would you like to talk about attachment disorder? And Stephanie and Devon have heard of it. Who wants to share what you know about attachment disorder?
Wait, you said Karen, right? Or am I like, did I hear wrong?
Karen, did you say yes?
Oh, yes, I said yes in the chat.
Well, then yes, I said Karen.
Oh, okay, I can share.
Yeah.
So to me, it's basically like a disorder that um it affects a child's ability to build emotional bonds with caregivers or whoever looks after them. Um, I said yes in the chat because I feel like I'm one of them. I have when I meet people, I get really close to them, and in moments when they're not away and stuff, I don't feel like I can. I don't know, like it's like an emotional support. I depend on people to feel like stable or to achieve homeostasis. I can't really explain it, but yeah.
Well, Karen, let's see what other people say about the term attachment disorder, because I think you kind of hit it. Now, I'm not diagnosing you. I'm saying the definition you gave. I, I think you could look, more in depth into your responses to other people and get a broader understanding of that. But let me see, Devon, or is it Davin?
It's Devon.
Devon.
I would say the same thing. It's more so a lack of the ability to be able to depend, or not even to depend, but to be able to properly administer like relationships and stuff.
Okay, when do you think that starts, Devon?
Probably during childhood,
Mm.
coming from the parents, how their household is ran, what goes on in the early childhood of the bringing up of the person.
Hmm. Let me see. Who there were a couple people who said yes. Was there Stephanie or
Yeah, I'm in there. Attachment styles they do start whenever you're younger, depending on how you bonded with your parents, affects how you bond with other people. There, I don't know exactly what causes what, but like there's avoidant attachment styles where you try to get close to somebody, but out of fear of, I guess getting too close, you pull away because you were never able to really get that close with your parents. And then there's sometimes where you have a trouble disattaching yourself, so like you're scared that they're going to leave, so you cling on to them a little bit more, which causes stress and other.
okay. So attachment disorder is one of, and not the only, and everyone who has experienced or is experiencing intergenerational trauma attributes does not have attachment disorder. But have any of you ever read the short story by James Baldwin called Sonny's Blues? And if you haven't read Baldwin's short stories, get on that right away. Anyone ever read Sonny's Blues? Okay, I'll keep it short. Oh, okay. Thank you, Karen, for saying no. And wait a minute. Layla has said yes. Layla, tell us about Sonny's Blues.
Sonny's Blues is basically about two brothers and Sonny, who is a jazz musician, struggling with, I think it was like addiction. And so it's just basically how those two, the brother and Sonny, come together at the end.
So
What he,
were they not together because of a funeral?
what did you say?
Were they getting together in the focus of Baldwin's short story? Were they gathered because of a funeral?
I believe so. Wasn't it his daughter or his daughter dying?
Perhaps a father?
Hmm.
Okay, and do you remember um, they're exploring the fact that their father was distant, emotionally distant,
Yes.
and so he never attached with them. Do you recall what experience the father had had in his youth?
Um, I don't. Um, didn't he? It was like some trauma that he
Yeah,
witnessed
yeah. He
with
saw
his.
was it his brother that was lynched?
Oh yeah, it was his brother.
And the father had seen the body hanging.
Hmm.
And so he had never been able, because he never talked about it, he never shared with his children what he had been through. So he was never able to love them closely. He always kept them at a distance. So is that a picture of how intergenerational trauma may enter a family?
Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay. So if you haven't read Sonny's Blues, read that short story. Um, Doc Barnes, am I going too long?
No, but I did want to serve and rescue you. I think I'm playing around with the share screen, and I apologize. I think I accidentally pressed that button.
Okay.
I could
Okay.
take it down from you. I was just preparing on my end.
Okay. So folks, in looking at intergenerational trauma for your background knowledge, read the book called Weathering by Dr. Arlene Geronimus, Geronimus. She is a Black scientist. And if any of you've ever been through the Old South and seen the old barns, if you've seen those old barns where the wood has been beaten by weather and it's gray and pitted, and that's called weathering. And her proposition is that our organs, if you speak of diabetes, heart disease, these other diseases so prevalent, and I will just focus that on Black people because we have so much of that in our community. And her position is that the constant racial stress, the trauma of just being Black in this country, weathers our organs and makes us more vulnerable to these other diseases. So, what are some of the behaviors that accompany this intergenerational trauma? And think about these, and if there are any terms that you need defined, put it in the chat, say define that term, and we'll find one of your colleagues, first of all, who can do it. How about hypervigilance? Are you all comfortable with the term hypervigilance? Like you're always on duty, you're always watching. I had some students one time I took on an outing, and we went to a large smorgasbord, and they needed to sit in the corner facing the door. They were watching the door. So I'm a country girl. I didn't know the meaning of that. And I said, now, why do we have to sit over here? We have to watch the door. You don't know who's going to come in that door, and if they might, have malintentions. That's an example of hypervigilance, when you're always watching around. Anyone else want to contribute to that hypervigilance? Anyone have an experience of hypervigilance that they'd like to put on the table? Okay.
Yeah, but I don't know if it'll be considered hypervigilance. It was recent.
Go ahead, Michaela.
Okay, so like homecoming, it was like a big crowd, like it's homecoming, so it's a big crowd. And it was like the police were there, but they were like armed and stuff because it was a big crowd. So I was with my friends and I saw a big group of people just start running. And I took off running too. I didn't like I left my friends and I just took off running too because it's police right there. I don't know what's going on, but they're running, so I'm just gonna run too.
Must be a reason to run, huh?
Indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that can be a form of hypervigilance. You're watching around, and then you see this happen, and you think you're triggered. I better run too. Something's going on. Yeah, the hypervigilance is the scanning and looking to see if you're safe, right? And then the trigger, running people, and then the trauma response, I have to run too. Okay, how about emotional withdrawal? Any of you want to say anything about emotional withdrawal? Where you just pull it in. You're in the group, you're in the setting. That's when you don't express yourself. People are withholding their emotions and having some sort of fear. Okay, you guys get it. I'm sitting here and I'm quasi-interacting, and then for some reason I become uncomfortable and I just tuck it in. I just pull myself in, sort of detach from what's going on around me, and just tuck inside. Okay.
Yeah, I
All
love
right.
these reflections. I mean, I think we're all realizing to the extent that intergenerational trauma impacts us all.
Uh-huh. Every Black person in this country has some level of it. And the anxiety can come from not being able to express yourself growing up and getting serious backlash from you. Yeah, it can. It can. When your emotions are denied, you're not acknowledged as wholly human. And so people tell you, you're not allowed to feel that way, or you don't feel that way, or you can't feel that way. when you do feel that way, right? So that can cause that emotional withdrawal. I just keep my stuff to myself. I'll just be here and not be here. And then the anxiety. Okay. Yeah. A lot of men do that. Yeah. But women do it too. Um, it it's really very, very difficult, I would think, to be a Black man in American society because I know how hard it is to be a Black woman. And it might not be as hard for us as it is for the men. I don't know that that's true. I've never done the research on it. But anyway, then the epigenetic changes that occur where our DNA doesn't change, but some expressions. You guys know about the double helix, how the DNA chain looks? And okay, all right. So you guys do. So on that chain, the chain doesn't change, but there are anomalies on it that can be passed down at birth that carry some of this intergenerational trauma, how we respond, how we regulate, things like that. So first, in this country, the study of intergenerational trauma was centered around the descendants of Jews that survived. Okay. Now, okay, Ms. Martinez, we see your comment. And now I'm dyslexic, so I will stop and read it so that I know what you're thinking. Okay, so the Holocaust survivors and their children were studied to see what the impact of surviving the Holocaust was on the children of the survivors. And that's where this study began. It could have began with whom and when. You guys tell me. Where could they have started this a study prior to World War II? With what group of people or groups of people? Anybody have an idea? Slaves and slavery. They could have started it there, couldn't they? And then there are the indigenous people, who were stuck in Indian schools where they tried to replicate some of the oppression that happened to the Africans. They tried to take away their language, change their name in the indigenous schools. Anyone familiar with the recent experiences in Canada where they found the bodies of children who had been put in the Indian schools? Anyone familiar with that? It was big in the news last year. Well, in Canada, a lot of the children that were put in the Indian schools to deculturalize them and try to force them to take on white culture, a lot of those children died and their bodies were buried. And they were finding those bodies at the relics of the Indian schools last year. And there was much about it. But if you look at the weathering response of Native Americans, what are their diseases? Diabetes, alcoholism. Same thing with other people who have suffered the kinds of oppression that people in this country have suffered. In Australia, the indigenous people have a very similar experience, and they have suffered because of the oppression when their land was taken over by the people sent there from the prisons of England, if you know that story. So these are the colonization has led to intergenerational trauma. So what are some of the health issues? Well, we know about the physical issues because so many of the people we love have these autoimmune diseases, heart disease, asthma, diabetes. Can you name some others that you know that we carry amongst people of African descent that are the consequence of this continuous stress and the weathering of the organs? Anxiety, depression, the symptoms that replicate PTSD, difficult forming relationships. Those are some of the mental health consequences of intergenerational trauma. And then behavioral patterns. What do you think some of the behavioral patterns are? Substance abuse, this detachment, the incapacity to attach. Do any of you know the brain researcher Bruce Perry? Oh yeah, gambling, any addiction. That's right, Stephen. Anyone ever heard of Bruce Perry? We'll start, and Doc will introduce you to him, but he does brain research. And the consequences of his research have revealed the premise that we learn to love and attach the first 100 days of our lives, the first 3 months. Mm-hmm. And how do you think people teach us to attach and to love? What are some of your thoughts on that? How does that happen?
I would say breastfeeding is probably important.
Yeah.
Raise your child.
Yeah. Holding, touching, what else? Attention, absolutely. And the first 100 days, that comes in the form of what? Goo goo gaga, you know, all that baby talk and stuff. Yeah.
Dr. Flynn, we're at 7:35.
I'll quit.
No, but here's the issue. I'm definitely going to shift a little bit because I want to make sure we talk about the article. But like I
Yes.
said, you are a wealth of resources. So as I'm sharing the screen, please feel free to interject. And actually, as you're talking, I want to keep up your energy with discussion. So I kind of modified my presentation a little bit to make sure it's not me preaching or teaching, but trying to get us to be reflective through learning about this article. Guys, I want to thank you for Dr. Flynn's portion of the presentation. If you guys can do a little applause emoji or something using the Zoom technology, it'd be greatly appreciated.
Thank you.
I guess I will send it through the chat one more time, but earlier I already sent the article that I identified that we're going to be talking about today. And I'm sending it again for those who might have just been a hard time to find it or to go back. So it was just put in the chat one more time. And you guys feel free to download. I will be honest, like I said, because I'm modifying from the energy that we're seeing right here. It's going to be less like my lectures, dot, tit for tat, et cetera, and more like a discussion through the main points of the article. Now, when I interrupted Dr. Flynn earlier, I actually thought that I was trying to play around with the screen share, right? And it did not seem to work. So hold on, let me see if I can do this one more time. It seems like there's some features in Zoom that they think are going to work, but it definitely has not learned to work just yet. All right, so let me go to PowerPoint and take over, and here you guys go, right? So this is the presentation that I want to go into. If you open up the article and look at it, the full name of this article is Understanding the, I don't know if there's an acronym, but the ITEH model. And essentially, it is a complete model focusing on intergenerational trauma, right? But there's a new key buzzword that I'm going to introduce to us. And it's so funny when you get caught up on trends, things kind of adapt. Things kind of change. They also refer to intergenerational trauma as identity trauma and or identity-based trauma. And the reason why they wanted to change that name is because of the subheading right here. You look at this model, it says trauma and healing among LGBTQ plus, and then Black, Indigenous, people of color communities, right? Now, I had this in my class just recently. We were just talking about it. Dr. Flynn was even saying that, like, you know what, almost every individual who is African American, most of us in this Zoom, have experienced some form of intergenerational trauma, right? But as we're learning in the literature now, we're starting to find out that look at the differences between intergenerational trauma and identity-based trauma. And as a result, we're seeing that same type of weighing down that's destroying and taxing on our bodies and our health. It's not just in African Americans, it's also in the communities of LGBTQ, BIPOC communities. And especially in the time today with our politics, in which I would argue that our worldwide leader is promoting hatred towards people that find themselves identifying in these communities, they really do have a lot of stress that they are dealing with. Now, we already heard from the expert already. That was Dr. Flynn, who gave us our definition of intergenerational trauma. However, I would argue that you gave us the definition of intergenerational trauma, and that was really great that you guys knew a lot about that. Now, what we're doing with this article is essentially exploring this new model for understanding and healing, right? And I'm going to be a little devil's advocate in here because I will tell you, just like Dr. Flynn stated, intergenerational trauma is occurring in all of us, regardless of our identities, whether we want to acknowledge it or not, right? But the healing process, right? Sometimes these theories assume that everybody goes through healing. And I want to make it clear that not everybody goes through healing. Sometimes this healing may occur too late. Sometimes it does not occur at all. And I just want to make sure that we get enough out of this to understand what it takes to heal. That might be some healing that you need, someone that you love needs, or someone that you might come in contact with and influence their mind. So let's think about healing, right? So we have this issue right now. I would love to have people put in the chat and or unmute themselves and tell me, what do you think it takes to heal from intergenerational trauma or identity-based trauma? Like what would need to occur within that individual to make that occur? Stephanie, I'm so glad you aren't going to stop talking now when I get on the mic.
The first thing that you have to do is acknowledge the fact that you have said traumas in the first place.
Absolutely. And that is so difficult. I would go even further than that. A lot of the research now is talking about, which you kind of hit on. It's not just about acknowledging that you have it, but you need to share that with your family. Not the negative aspects of it, right? But the fact that you have that. Share your stories with your family. All right, Karen and Tyson, I'd like to hear from both of you guys.
I would say Daima. No, not Daima. Jose or Josie. I don't really know how to pronounce their name. But I feel like for me, they hit it right where it's supposed to be, self-reflection. I would say pick up a pen and start writing or turn on your phone and start talking, because a lot of the time we can know something is wrong, but you never know what is the precursor of it until you start digging deep within yourself. I know for me, I'm more on the voice memo side, because sometimes you can write and try to really see and explain your thoughts to yourself, but our brains think faster than we can write. So just talk it out. And the more you talk, the deeper you will go, and you will find that some things that you thought that you healed from, you actually did. And it can go so far back to early adolescence.
Absolutely. Thank you, Karen. Right. And then I want to hear from Tyson. Your hand is up. And one, I want to thank Karen for not only just sharing, but also highlighting on what's occurring in the chat. If you guys aren't paying attention, it's a lot of good information going on there, some that we can't share. So also, if you don't feel comfortable talking, put it in the chat. We see you. Mr. Tyson.
Uh, One of the things that I thought of was to one, like Karen said, not Karen, like somebody else said, understand that you have that problem. And when you understand that you have that problem, I would say like seek things that make you feel safe or go places or do things like if you feel comfortable reading a book, I would say read a book in a quiet place and just think about think about the things that you don't like that you know you have about yourself and then think about the things that your parents do or they have going on that you don't like. And I would say compare and contrast and just um basically try to implement better things to do instead of doing what you see your parents do. Like you see your parents get angry at certain things and you find yourself getting angry at the same things. I would find something less anger drawn to do, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much. I am very excited to hear these type of comments come from us. All right. So again, I want to move on, right? But again, the reason why we want to have this research or presentation was to talk about research, right? And the main purpose of this research really was to explore individuals' experience and how they heal from intergenerational trauma, right? But just like I stated before, not everybody gets to the point of healing. So it's funny when you sit back and think about this. Look at this method right here, right? They had 10 participants between the age of 22 and 39 that participated in this study to find out what's really happening in the world, right? That's essentially what the critical constructivist grounded theory is. How do we get our identity and perception of the world from how the world treats us, right? So we have to talk to the people to get that, right? Now, out of these 10 people, I want you guys to put a number in the chat if you're comfortable with it, right? Out of the 10 people that, of course, experience identity-based and or intergenerational trauma, right? How many of the 10 do you believe made it to the healing process? And not self-reported healing. I'm healed, I'm better. I'm talking about with the clinicians involved with the study, thinking that they are on the path for healing. What number out of 10? And I love this because if you give me a number out of 10, it's almost could be 7 is like what, 70%? 3 is 30%. I like to hear what number you guys think had reached to the point of healing. Oh my goodness, the chat is rolling. All right. You know what? You guys are absolutely right. Actually, I do got to call somebody out. Somebody went as high as 4 or 5, right? It did not get that high, right? It was only 4 people. It was only 4 people that reached that point of healing, right? So again, I think it's funny how Dr. Flynn talked about how this trauma weighs down on you and leads us to having later health care issues, mental health issues, right? But only, let's say, 4 out of 10 people, and all of us are impacted by this. If without intervention, only 4 out of 10 people get to the point in which they are healing. Only 4 people. Now, this activity, I'm not going to have you do it, but I want you guys to think while we're on this slide. At the very end, I want you guys to sit back and think. How many of you think that identity-related trauma or intergenerational trauma, which we're talking about, again, the modern discipline is trying to make these one in the same, right? Not because we're saying intergenerational trauma is different from identity-based trauma or identity-related trauma, just in the sense of when you look at the impact that it has on an individual, you can't tell. Physiologically, mentally, the impact, it's still taxing to all of us. And the way that we heal has a similar method according to this article. So we're grouping it together. But I want to ask you guys, how many of you think that identity-related trauma or intergenerational trauma differs from post-traumatic stress disorder? That's people that come back from war, people that have extremely traumatizing experiences, right? How many of people think it's qualitatively different, right? And then go a step further. Which one do you think is worse,
Can I
right?
just can I just go?
Yeah, oh yeah, go ahead, Tyson. Honestly, I was ready to lower your hand. I thought that was left over from talking before. I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
No, it was, but I didn't lower it. I'm about to do it now. But I feel like they are different, and I feel like the one identity related trauma. Oh no, I'm on the PTSD side. I think PTSD is worse because I feel like when you go to war, what you have to deal with there from like what you have to deal with at home, like at home you have all the resources to get better and or you have outlets to you have outlets to go to when you are feeling out of body or you're not feeling that in the right state of mind. If you're in war and you just came home, it's like you were somewhere for over maybe 1 or 2 years, and this was the norm for those 2 years. You had to wake up, kill somebody, go to sleep, kill somebody. You had to see people die, people that you were close with pass away. You had to deal with the fear of dying every day. I feel like it's not the same at all.
Okay. All right. I love that. I love that. Now I'm gonna feel bad because I am gonna come after you. I'm gonna criticize, but I want to hear from Stephanie first. Oh, you're muted.
Okay, there we go. Um, so whenever it comes to PTSD and intergenerational trauma, I feel like generational trauma, in a sense, triggers PTSD because PTSD is closely associated with being in war, but it also can happen outside of that too. It's just being whenever you're in a continuous state of anxiety or stress. So if you're in an environment that has a lot of generational trauma that might result into an environment where you're constantly in a state of anxiety, it could trigger that said anxiety. Also, the symptoms for PTSD and intergenerational trauma could probably similar, like are very similar in a way. So I feel like it's not necessarily that one is worse than the other. They're just both two experiences that Black people in the community in America or around the world experience, maybe even simultaneously.
Now, what you just said is absolutely perfect. And I said I was going to kind of tease or combat or conflict with what Tyson was saying, right? Now, here's an issue. Tyson, what you answered, which is not wrong, right? But you were focusing on how we get PTSD. How we get PTSD is not PTSD. You're absolutely right. In order for an individual to get PTSD, they're usually in war in the most outrageous circumstances that become normalized for them. And then you take them out of it, right? But listen to the similarities of what we think about with identity-based or intergenerational trauma, right? Every day we are being beaten down. Trauma has been referred to as kind of like a battle fatigue in that it's around us every single day. It's exhausting. You cannot escape it, right? And then you're expected to go to work and be like everyone else. Let's not focus on the situation of where the trauma came from, but when you think about the aspects that categorize the effect of the trauma on the individual and how it impacts your body, they are more similar than we realize. They are a lot more similar than we realize. And that's the issue. And the other thing that I usually talk about is that, sometimes people get into this game of comparative trauma, right? I went through this, you don't know my life, or, the kind of phrase we always sit back and said, it doesn't matter if you were to objectively list down what your trauma is defined out of. What's more important is how that trauma affects each one of us. And when we take a step back, and that's the reason why we have these groupings, we come to find out that regardless of the source of the trauma, it impacts us all the same. It impacts us all the same. And that's why healing is so important. Stephanie, I'm not sure if that's carryover hand, right? All right. But I want to talk a little bit about the relevance of this article. One, this article is talking about an intersectional form of lens of looking at this trauma, right? So it is looking at trauma shaped by racism, colonialism, heterosexism, and transphobia, right? It's kind of weird when we talk about this new term of identity-based trauma, but essentially we're just trying to find out that these same effects, it's not just from being Black and having that intergenerational trauma passed down. There's so many other sources that other groups of people are facing that's experiencing this. So it's kind of combining all of this together, right? Now, what did this research present? Previous models ignored, again, these intersecting oppressions and didn't group it together, talking about identity-based resilience. This article believes that the same techniques that we could propose to help you from intergenerational trauma would also be able to help you for these different forms of identity-based trauma to help people become a lot more resilient. Now, I want to hear from you guys, right? So again, the question I want to hear from you guys from right now, if you want to share it, why might it be important to study multiple identities together, right? Rather than separate? Right? Intergenerational trauma on African Americans, intergenerational trauma on Jewish people, right? The type of identity-based trauma that people might get if they are from the queer identity, right? Or sexual orientation. Why do you think it's better to study them together? Or I'll take it this way. How many of you guys think that we should not combine them and that we should give each of them their own separate approach and attention? Uh-oh. Think I'm losing. I don't see no hands waving. Nobody's mic unmuted. All right, Stephanie. Thank you. Thank you. I'm gonna say Stephanie, Jose, and Tyson.
Given the fact that you were talking about how it's not necessarily how we got the trauma, but how it affects our bodies, the idea of separating them kind of seems counterproductive because it insinuates that because it's not the same, it's not necessarily different, but like because they're not the same, they don't have the same effect. But in reality, we are all going through traumatic experiences, and we should be able to not only relate to each other, but help one another. And it kind of gets rid of that comparison that we see on social media all the time because it's different, but still we both go through the same symptoms. We still have the same symptoms. So
Absolutely. All right, Tyson, please raise your hand. And Stephanie, if you don't mind, if you can lower yours.
I was gonna say, I think we should keep them together because if we do one at a time, then we're only gonna get one result. But if we do multiple people, then we can get different results, and that can lead to more research and more like that we can figure out about the problem. I feel like if we just do one person, then we're limiting ourselves to minimum amount of information.
Absolutely. All right, Jose, you're next. And Karen, I'm not sure if you're getting a little stage fright. Okay, there it goes again. Jose, and then
Not get
Karen.
stage fright.
I would say to combine multiple identities because you might be able to find similarities that cause these traumas in different cultures. And like through combining them, you can also find like the differences of how like different cultures inherit these traumas.
All right, all right. Karen, go right ahead.
I feel like there's nothing wrong with grouping them together, just as long as you understand how they could be affecting different people separately. Because the circumstance may be the same, but I'm trying to put the circumstances could be the same, but depending on who you are and what you identify as, your perspective is different. Therefore, everyone should be, I guess, studied in their own regard. But then after your study in your own regard, which would be like the basics of everything, then you can group them together and see how they relate. Because without doing it individually, how do you know? How can you truly know how things are the same if you don't know how they are separately?
And you know what? Let me tell you, I'm going to piggyback on what you're saying. I think the answer is that it depends, right? Let me tell you what originally came to my mind when I created this. Imagine you were in a small town and you are seeking help, right? Now, you might be a unique individual. There's not too many minorities in your town. There's not too many people that identify as queer, not too many people that identify as lesbian, not too many people that identify as gay. In that small town, it makes sense to get those individuals together so you can actually have a community of people seeking help, right? Now, in more dense areas, Wilmington or Philadelphia, where trauma is a dime or dozen, it might make more value in addressing these things separately. The other thing is this, what's really true with racial trauma, right, has been to get people together and allow them to see their own racial identity and similarities. So getting these multiple groups together can make it so that people that might not have ever had conversations with one another, right, can sit back and share in the healing process and probably address some other issues in terms of their beliefs about others that weren't even a part of this project. This is a discussion point. There is no right answer. I hope you're still there, Dr. Flynn. And if you don't mind sharing a quick, what would be your belief on whether we should address these in groups or together, based off your experience or thoughts?
Okay. My jumping off point is that human beings are spiritual and physical and emotional, psychological. So I always think that when a baby is born, if it is loved, if it experiences unconditional positive regard, it will grow up to be a balanced person. Then when that's not available to the child, when there's neglect or brutality or social rejection, then that traumatic experience will be responded to according to the uniqueness of the person. But I maintain that pain is pain,
Yes,
that fear is fear, that sadness is sadness. So I have sort of a weird way of looking at this.
Yeah.
Now, scientifically, I think what you do is that qualitative piece. If you study groups individually, then you call through the responses to see where the commonalities are. That's just how I see the world. So I don't think it has to be one way or the other. But I take your point, Doc. If you are in a dense population, it's more effective to handle it group by group, I believe, because of the numbers. Because if you're looking to learn something, it has to be a manageable amount of data that comes in. Just
Absolutely.
thinking about it scientifically and through a research lens. But I fundamentally believe that pain is pain, that sadness is sadness, and I don't think it is allotted by color. I think these experiences that cause intense, intrusive memories, such as people with PTSD experience, that can be found in any person that has been constantly bludgeoned by hurtfulness, whatever form it takes. And so they will have PTSD, yes, returning soldiers, but also children in abusive households with that constant recurring violation of their soul and their spirit and their mind. So I'm talking too much, but
No, not at all.
that's how I see it. If it made any sense to anyone.
I gave you the best type of discussions question. There's no answer, right? And actually, I think from what I knew of you, it would be a challenging question, right? So I'm glad we answered it the best way we have. And I think if we could hear from everyone, there are different stances. Guys, I want to go back and shift to the model because I want to get through this really quickly. There's not much more. There's more slides, but there's not much more to talk about, right? So let's sit back and talk about intergenerational trauma, right? How does this thing occur? Well, the origin and the most important, potent origin is we're experiencing these multifaceted forms of intergenerational trauma, which Dr. Flynn was just mentioning a second ago. When you go outside, if your identity is obvious to people, you're going to get these multifaceted forms of sources of trauma. You are reminded of your blackness. You are reminded of your orientation. You are reminded when your parents might hug you that, yes, I love my daughter. I love my son, but I don't approve of your sexual orientation, or I don't approve of your partner, right? And I'm going to love you, but I throw it a little slide in, but God is not going to forgive you. Like these little things are like always around you in everything that you do, right? And then, so we're experiencing that in the day-to-day world. And then we're carrying intergenerational traumas impacts on the self. So you have the outside world that's beating you up, but how does it make you view the world? And this is what is so unique because we have individuals, I forget his name, but there's apparently a black celebrity that was in the media and he has a white girlfriend. And he was up there speaking and talking about how I don't care if white people call us the N-word. It doesn't bother us. Let me tell you, some very Afrocentric minorities in the media are upset at this individual, but they're looking at his experience, right? You know, he's an NFL player. He's married to some Instagram white model or something, and he doesn't mind if she calls him this or that, right? He's not carrying this impact of trauma on himself, but many of us do, right? And I would even go so far that he probably is carrying it, but he doesn't understand the way that he's carrying it. Since he has money, and I've heard from a lot of people, money gives you access, he's just not aware how it's impacting him, right? And for him to get up and say some silly things that pretty much go against the entire Black community, I will double down right now. He probably does have these impacts on himself and his identity. Karen, I apologize. I saw your hand go up and it went down. If you want to share something, go right ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to share something really quick while you're on the how the trauma impacts like yourself as far as the intergenerational aspect of things. A lot of times you hear, and I'm pretty sure everybody is familiar with this phrase, what happens in the house, stay in the house, or don't tell the business beyond the doors, or things like that. So you then grow up to try to fix it yourself. The thing with trying to fix it yourself is if you're staying within that phrase, right, whatever that may means to each and every person's situation, because circumstances are different. If you don't go beyond what you know, you can't heal. And I did put it in the comment earlier. I believe that you can't grow without being uncomfortable. When you're uncomfortable, you can grow. It helps you reflect on yourself, especially with the outsider perspective, because certain situations, having in-house opinions keeps the same trauma in the same loop because they're speaking off of his experience based off of the same phrase that was told to them, if that makes sense.
Yes. Absolutely.
Doc, if I might,
Go ahead.
that was Stephanie, right?
No, I think that was Karen.
I'm Karen.
Karen, in my training in counseling and therapy, we had a say, secrets make you sick. So when you say, keep it in the house, what happens in here stays in here and stuff. And children are sitting in classrooms afraid because somebody in the house just pounds on someone else in the house, or someone in the house is molesting one of the children, and they're being told what happens in here stays in here. So we say in my training as a pastoral counselor, secrets make you sick.
All right. Now I feel bad because I'm not a football fan. If I was a football fan, I probably would know this. And I don't want you guys to think poorly of the Saquon Barkley, The story I was just telling you before about the individual who has a white wife or girlfriend who has been using the N-word in old tweets. And he goes on and defended her by saying, she calls me this all the time and I'm okay with it. That's Saquon Barkley, who plays for the Philadelphia Eagles. I didn't know it was that close to home, and I hope I don't ruin anybody's football Friday. But I just want to give some validity to kind of what I'm saying. And again, if you look it up, you can see it all over the internet, where a lot of our black, I want to say semi-activists are upset and uproar about what this individual has said and coming to the support of him and how he views himself in this world, right? But again, he's young and very rich. So he could probably afford to ignore stares, ignore places that will look at you when you don't have money because he always has them. All right, let's
I
follow.
wonder how he'll feel when the world starts calling his children those names.
You know what? Let me tell you, I wish there was a reality television show to go and see it. I
Yeah.
don't watch reality TV, but I would watch that one. The next thing about where we can get this is another part of intergenerational trauma is seeing it on others and people in our family, our generations. And then last, which is a side in this graphic at the bottom, is that healing. And like I said, that's the area where 4 out of 10 in a good group actually get to, right? So this is, again, when you talk about that battle fatigue and how it wears down on you, there should be no surprise that this impacts us mentally and physically and with our health because of the many areas in which it impacts us. And only a small percentage of us ever get free from that. Now, the model that we're going to talk about really quickly talks about 4 aspects for it. One, we experience the multifaceted trauma, right? We carry its impacts on ourselves, and then we see its effects on others and generations, and then we can get the healing from it. So what I want to do is expand on each of these things right here. So the first category is talking about these multifaceted experiences, right? Again, it includes PTSD. It includes identity related trauma. And it also includes historical trauma that has happened from our families, right? You can talk to people and they can tell you how their neighborhood or their community has done them wrong. And I'm not going to go into it now because I'm looking at the time, but me and my sons have a very personal experience of racism in our own neighborhood. I'm sure that story will be told over and over again to children that aren't even born yet, knock on wood. I'm not ready to be a grandfather, right? Um, Next, category 2. Category 2 is talking about how you carry its impact on the self. And there's research that argues it can mess with us in 4 different ways. Emotional, right? Through suppression. Our real feelings, we're hiding it. I bet you, as minorities or any of these identity-based individuals, we're good at hiding our emotions, right? Even if we snap or wild out, or actually, no, I forgot what you call it today. I don't know what you guys call it when you just go all out today, right? But many people will argue that even before they get to that point, right, they feel like they were hiding their emotion. That's why usually why these outbursts are unseen. It's like, wow, what just happened? You don't realize they were holding in their frustration for quite some time, and you kept pushing them and pushing them, right? Communication, silence around pain. So I think some of the comments we had earlier were talking about people who were to sit back and just kind of lean back and get quiet when they're uncomfortable. Why do we do that? All right, Tiana, I want to hear from you. It's a new hand. What do you like to share? Uh-oh, looks like your mute button might be broken. All right, something popped up in the chat. Okay, all right. Now, if you put it in the chat, I'll try to keep my eye on it. All right, but so you can share, and I'll share your comment. Other ways in which we're getting this is cultural identity, fragmentation or compartmentalization of who we are, right? Fragmentation, and I would say that Saquon Barkley is probably a good example of that, where we sit back and we define Blackness in our own unique way. And unfortunately, some of us define Blackness as feeling as if you are less than, right? Which is actually helping and promoting white supremacy, right? By us walking around and feeling as if we don't matter or count as much. It's our own actions, our own acquisitions, our own avoidance, our own not feeling as if our opinion is important. And that's embedded in who we are. Behavioral, Dr. Flynn talked about it before, hypervigilance and a scarcity mindset.
Wait,
Mhm.
oh,
All right, Tiana, I was just ready to say, I saw you unmute yourself. Go ahead. What'd you like to say?
so for the communication, I do feel like in a lot of Black households, we aren't really shown how or where to put our emotions. And a lot of the times we don't really have the resources and we're unaware and don't have the knowledge to deal with our emotions properly. So it kind of connects with the observing because when we're young, we're not listening, we're watching. So just seeing our
Mhm.
parents or whoever we're around act irrational and act on impulsively with their emotions, we believe that it's okay. So then the older we get, we don't really know how to put names to those emotions or how to deal with them. And then so we suppress them. And then that leads to the connection between the mind and the body because then the nervous system cannot calm itself down because of the emotions that we're feeling. And it's kind of like a trigger response to us. So we're constantly being triggered, meaning our nervous system is constantly being triggered, which leads to illnesses and other chronic diseases.
I am so glad you said that. That again, what you're saying, it's almost like you're reinforcing the slides that we're going over. The thing that I heard in what you said, though, there's a phrase that I always sit back and hear that businesses or organizations use that if everything is important, then nothing is important. And quite frankly, the hypervigilance that we get through identity-based trauma has a parallel there. Because people who are experiencing this, our hypervigilance, our immune system, our physical responses, we are ramped up
Mhm.
all the time. And then as a result, something that our immune system, our mental grit or resilience might have been able to deal with, right? And when you need it the most, it's not there for you.
Mhm.
Right. So I actually see just a little parallel from that comment. And that's another way of just looking at how taxing and draining these type of experiences are on us. Now I'm going to segue back in. I'm looking at time as well, right? But category three talks about seeing these things. And again, we observe patterns in our family, right? I personally will tell you that I think I struggle a great deal with my kids raising them and trying to find out what patterns I'm passing on to them, what beliefs I had about the world and how I am a black man and how I fit in and how I'm given access as a result of me being a professor or a doctor, right? I was very cautious about passing on those thought patterns or beliefs to my children because again, it really does. What happens if they're unable to reach the level of success that I am, or they don't want to reach that level of a success? Would I inadvertently be telling them that the world's going to treat you differently than the world that you grew up in? So we really need to be careful about or mindful about what we're teaching them and then also what we're showing them. Because you can teach somebody without ever opening your mouth. They can learn from you without you ever knowing that you're the teacher. Now, the
Doc, could
next,
I ask a question?
yes, go right ahead.
I'm just wondering, from your club, if any of them learned any things about being Black that were passed down that they found were essential to their survival.
The good, right? You know what? I would love to hear that. And I think we're on category four, healing. So I think I'd love to hear that as well. Karen, go ahead.
So I was taught to always know or be aware of my surroundings and know how to read the room. That's essential to my survival because where I grew up from, I didn't grow up in like the suburbs, and it's a lot of crime that happened in my area. So knowing how to read your surroundings help you get away from troubles all the time. And it goes into school too, actually. Knowing how to where to present your best self and what that look like depending on whatever situation you're in. Like the way I act with my friends is not how I would act in a school setting. And it's important to differentiate different aspects of your life and how you show up in that whatever it may look like, because you can't be the same person in every situation.
All right, excellent. We got a comment in the chat talking about code switching, which is essentially what you were talking about, Karen. Anybody else have anything that they would like to share about like some positives that you have learned and been passed down from your families about being Black and how to deal with the world? Stephanie.
My mom always put a constant reinforcement of my beauty and my strength, and not only like me personally, but like in my family and in ancestor, like well, not ancestors specifically, but like how much we've gone through and how even though everybody tries to say that we're powerless, we're in fact not. And to never let anybody convince me that I'm not deserving of everything I want or could desire. That was definitely something my mom reinforced on a daily. Also, education. Education was a big one of it.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing. Anyone else? All right, Karen.
This one will be really quick. Self-efficacy was something that my mom taught me. Um, I'm pretty sure everybody know like our history and how we didn't have a voice. We had to create that voice for ourselves. So my mom was real big on like never not stand up for yourself or or communicate what you need because closed mouths like don't get fed.
Yeah. And let me tell you, I love that you're able to use that because I've told some young people, I don't see many this year, that's why I love the incoming class that we have at Cheyney University. But I've told many young people that, you know what, I can see you don't have the skills to communicate calmly or effectively. As a result, you've been wronged by Dr. Barnes in his class. But since you don't have the skills to calmly and effectively communicate how you've been wronged, there's no help for you. Unless you want me to go in and this student told me that you said XYZ and that's not right, you know, professor or my colleague, right? So you're absolutely right. That is a very powerful thing. And I want you guys to understand how blessed you are, or you have the opportunity to practice that while you're at Cheyney, because there are many people who don't have those skill sets at all, and they are wronged on a day-to-day, daily basis. And they don't know how to go from 0 to 25 to Dre's point. They go from 0 to 100 real quick. And they know they're wrong, even though they are right, because they're not having those skills. All right. Again, category 4, we're talking about some solutions. We're really getting to the end of this, right? But what are some strategies to reach to healing, right? One is being grounded, right? Being grounded, making sure that you're grounded in what's really happening, getting multiple perspectives on things that occur. Some of us can see racism, discrimination, or prejudice in areas where it's not there. Getting somebody else's opinion is often really good. Therapy, empathy, and reframing family narratives, right? Again, somebody might come in and sit back and say, oh, it's because of the man. The man's holding me down. Like, whoa, slow your roll. You don't have your license. You're you don't know code, you didn't study. Like there's other things that's going on than the man holding you down. Like, so let's reframe these family narratives in-house so you can be better able to go out in the world. Collective strategies for groups, chosen families, right? Which is essentially, I know we're all born into one family, but many people that are successful, they might have their home away from home. And that's usually the family that you chose, right? Relying on them, establishing community connection, and reclaiming cultural practices, right? Reclaiming cultural practices. One of the things that I'll say this from the bottom of my heart, like really quickly, is I felt when I was younger, I'm not saying it's true today, but I felt that the Black community was lost because we were a current and culture of now. Many of our traditions were lost, but I met many people who have reclaimed cultural practices, right? And it's funny because when I was really young, I would kind of look at people who would have changed their name legally from Barnes to Daishiki, right? Because they're trying to identify and reclaim their cultural identity. But as I grow up, I realized it probably was a very important buffer from this type of trauma. All right. Let me see. Now, some of the themes that were occurring in here, which you guys have already said before. Again, I've talked about it, finding pride and community, right? Reconnecting to your heritage. I just stated before, but then also reclaiming your voice, like you were saying before about activating or advocating for yourself. These are all the themes that they found out in the voice of healing, right? So these are the things that you guys can take away. And I promise you guys, this is a psychology club, but that's why I talk about trauma in most of my classes. And I usually stop and pause. I'm like, guys, this is the most important lecture of this class, right? Because it's giving you takeaways that are meaningful. These messages that are on the screen right now, when it comes down to healing from something that probably all of us are impacted with to some extent, this is very important. The humor, the jokes, the good time, and the sharing that we had earlier, I'm not knocking any of that. But this right here is what we should focus on. This lets this the path for healing and to make our lives better. We should learn this, remember this, and practice this in our day-to-day lives. And take it back to our families who are not at Cheyney. When you go back home for Thanksgiving, this should be a part of the Thanksgiving. We always do some kind of corny thing at Thanksgiving prayer with our family. What are you thankful for? Where were last year? Right? Again, these certain conversations, which seem funny, but we can be funny and vulnerable in front of our families. These are the kind of things you might want to take back to that Thanksgiving dinner. Change your life and the life of those you love. I'm just going to leave this up on the board. I'm going to say this right now is the end, right? I want to stop this right now, but if anyone is interested, you can look at what these implications are and what to do next. But I want to open this up right now to go back to our presenters or organizers, right? And then any additional questions that we might have. Olivia?
Go.
Hey y'all. So I just wanted to say a quick thank you to everybody that had came out today and participated. We really appreciate it. We want to say thank you to Dr. Barnes and Dr. Flynn. We are so grateful for y'all to take out some of your time today and just come and share this with us. That's why I'm just so grateful for this. I think it was a really good event. We also wanted to quickly share that we have an event next Thursday called called Meet Your Doppelganger. You can't see it, but
the green screen,
meet your doppelganger, meet your think-alike. Please, please, please come join us. Get other people involved in Psychology Club. You don't have to be a psychology major. I see some people here that aren't psychology majors that are a part of this and that joined and had a conversation with us. I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yes, I look forward to getting to know my fellow psych majors as well. And with Meet the Doppelganger, I'm really excited for that event because we're taking personality tests and basically making friends, and we'll be building kind of like a little community. And I got a couple questions about how to join Psych Club. You don't necessarily have to join. We don't have like general body meetings, but we are going to have we plan to have lots of events. So we'll be sure to send out like either the group me, and then you can follow our Instagram as like the CU Psych Club where everything is on there. Stay up to date. The group me is also on the Instagram. So
also, Dr. Flynn, we will be emailing you. We want to stay in touch.
Yes.
I never got the chance to really talk about who I am to you before we had started, but this is my passion, intergenerational trauma, really child development, everything. I want to be a marriage and family therapist. So I really love everything that you had shared tonight, especially you also, Dr. Barnes. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yes, and we look forward to working with you. We hope we can work with you again because I really enjoy listening to you speak. You're very insightful and you're very, very well read. So
thank you.
It was my personal privilege and honor to spend this time with you all, and how impressed I am at how serious you are about your educations and how well and you are aware of the elements of this discussion. And I am so proud of each one of you. It is an honor to have been your guest, and I thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks again. We really appreciate you.
Also, thank you, everyone.
Yes.
Have a wonderful night. Please stay safe, stay warm.
Yes.
And we will see you next week at Meet Your Doppelganger.
Next Thursday.
Yes. Good night,
Is it going to
everyone.
be
Oh,
in Zoom or in person?
it will be in
It's in
person.
person.
It's
Yeah.
at Marcus Foster 211.
Yes.
Okie dokie.
From Thursday, Marcus Foster to 11, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m.
Yes, if you're not already following the Instagram, it is CU psych
And
underscore.
we have a couple
club.
things with like Cheyney Strong, so you could just go look for us on there. You'll see
Yeah.
Psyched Up and everything.
Thank you.
All
You're
right,
welcome.
thank you all again. Feel free to email, reach out with any questions.
Yes, we don't
We're gonna-
bite. If you see us in person, say hi.
Yeah. So we're gonna go ahead and end the meeting, but thank you all again.
Have a great night, y'all.